Catch-up contributions, inherited IRA changes, and major news for high-income earners. 401ks are getting a facelift. No, not a celebrity facelift, a real-life facelift.
A good one.
Yeah.
This is Queer Money episode number 558, and today we're talking with LGBTQ plus financial advisor Jake Skelhorn about the 5 401k changes you need to know about in 2025. Spoiler alert, some of you may be able to retire sooner than you thought.
Exactly. Jake is the lead advisor at Spark Wealth Advisors, and he and his life partner and business partner, his husband, serve the LGBT community and allies by offering comprehensive services in investment management, retirement planning, and tax planning.
So let's get started.
Capital One Auto Navigator does more than just auto financing. We're here to help you find a car you love, too. Shop millions of cars from thousands of dealers nationwide. Research your favorite makes and models. Explore dealers near you and more. All on Auto Navigator.
So, folks, as many of you know, John and I try to keep our thumb or our ear on the pulse of what's going on with LGBT finance, whether that's in social media or in media in general. And because of that, we follow a lot of LGBTQ finance nerds or financial advisors or
Kings and queens.
Yes,
unicorns.
Right, folks all over the place. And recently, we've been doing a lot more on LinkedIn, and because of that, we have engaged with our guest today, Jake Skelhorn. So, welcome to the Queer Money Podcast, Jake.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Definitely. I noticed that you are on a regular basis, you're posting and you're sharing topics of interest that I think are important for individuals who either work with a financial advisor, want to work with a financial advisor, or care about their investments in general. And the one post you shared the other day really kind of connected with me, in part because staying on top of all of the changes that happen in the world of finance is a full-time job, basically.
Those regulators like to change those rules all the time. It's like they're getting paid just to change rules.
Yeah, exactly. So you shared one about coming changes for 2025 regarding 401ks, which John and I, as many of you know, we preach. If you are employed and you have an employer that has a retirement plan of any sort, employer-sponsored retirement plan, you need to be engaged with that and be getting that extra money so that you can save for retirement. And we have shared before that LGBTQ folks in general are either not participating when they have access to at a lower rate, and they're also not putting as much money aside for their retirement as the general population. So I think it's important for us to know what is available to us. So Jake, you shared in your post, and folks will link to the post in the show notes for this episode. You shared in your post that there are some coming changes that you think are probably the most important ones that we need to pay attention to. And I think it's really important that we highlight these. And John and I wanted to invite you on to share those with folks. So let's start off with probably one of the ones that I think most people could potentially impact most people, and that is the fact that the amount that we can now contribute as catch-up amounts for those of us who are a little bit older,
wiser.
Yeah, those amounts have changed, and I think for queer folks who are a little bit older, many of us are trying to catch up when it comes to planning for retirement. So do you mind sharing with us, or let's talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so just for, I guess, a little bit of context, if you're over age 50, you are allowed to contribute what's called a catch-up contribution to your 401k. So anyone can do the ordinary limit, which this year is up to $23,000. But if you're over age 50, you can do an additional $7,500. Those amounts are both kind of indexed for inflation each year. So they rise every couple of years or so. But starting next year in 2025, there's a new catch-up limit for those who are between the ages of 60 and 63 specifically. And that number is going to be the greater of $10,000 or 150% of this year's catch-up limit. So the greater of those two numbers would be the latter there. So 150% of this year's 7,500 would be 11,250. So yeah, if you're again in that 60 to 63 age range, that's what you're going to be able to start contributing next year as your catch up.
Nice. So they're basically, that's the government saying that we're not saving enough for retirement. So here, now that you're at 60 and you're about ready to retire, here's your opportunity to do a little bit better.
Yeah,
Right.
which I think is an important thing, because folks who are at that age are probably really focused on, am I saving enough or have I saved enough for retirement? Because that's when you're starting to make decisions about when you would retire. Right.
I'm curious what, we know that time in the market is more valuable than timing the market. But if you're like 65 or I'm sorry, if you're 60, thinking about retiring at about 63, 65, yeah, you can make these contributions to your 401k, but what kind of, I know you can't give specific recommendations, but like what kind of investment strategy would one consider to try to get the most out of that for the short duration they're going to be able to have that invested?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, as people get closer to retirement, they want to be naturally more conservative, lower risk investments. But you still want to think about retirement as a, multi-decade part of your life, right? So that should still involve at least a portion of your investments allocated to higher risk investments like stocks, equities. So ultimately, you want to be balanced, but don't be too conservative, because you still want to try to keep up with inflation over your actual retirement. So that's still a big risk that a lot of people forget about when they try to be too low risk.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that when we think about these kinds of benefits, who do you see as the ones who would benefit the most from them, especially folks in the queer community?
Yeah, so those who maybe got a late start to saving for retirement, if you're in that age range where you're really starting to focus on, how much you're going to need saved for retirement, these catch-up limits will definitely benefit those folks who, can start to obviously put more away and also adjust kind of what their fixed expenses will be. So, the more that you can save, obviously, the less you're able to live off of at the same time. So, yeah, anyone who's gotten kind of a late start or really starting to think more about how much they're going to need saved and kind of, getting closer to that retirement age.
Definitely. I would also think, if you've made progression in your career, you may be at a point now where you're making significantly more money. And so you do have the ability to, instead of taking that extra trip to Mykonos or PV, to say, maybe I'll split that money and we'll just go to Palm Springs and I'll put that money into my 401k. So
I don't know. Skipping Mykonos is going a little bit too far.
Right. But it really does speak to this idea that if we are progressing in our career and we are earning more and we are at the height of our earnings, this may be the opportunity for us to do this. But this kind of leads me into another question, which you shared, that this is also a change. And this is a change for individuals who have started to increase their income. There is a change there for high income earners. And folks, it may not feel like you're a high income earner in some cities, but because of the dollar amount is static across the United States, you may actually be in this group. So let's talk about this. What change is there now to individuals who are high income earners, and what they can do with, or what they have to do with, their 401k contributions?
Yeah, so just going back to that catch up, as it stands today, you can do your catch-up contribution into your pre-tax 401k or your Roth. It's whatever you choose. But this is actually pushed back to 2026, this specific provision. If you're considered a highly compensated employee by the IRS, which means you earn over $145,000 this year, you're now required, or you will be required in 26, to make that catch-up contribution to Roth. So you no longer have a choice between pre-tax or Roth just for that catch-up portion. And my understanding is that that's the IRS's way of saying that they want more of their tax revenue today instead of down the line. But yeah, that's something that's coming in 26 for highly compensated employees.
But a benefit there, wouldn't it be, for those who think that they might want to retire early? That's almost kind of like forcing a Roth conversion in a way, right? Well, you wouldn't have to do the Roth conversion because you'd have the money in the Roth. And if you retire in 5 years, you can start to tap that money before you tap your other retirement money if you decide to retire a little bit early, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the good thing with Roth contributions, even though you're paying taxes on it today, is that you can always take that money out anytime, the contribution portion out. It's just the earnings or the growth on that money that has to wait 5 years and after age 59 and a half to pull out tax and penalty free. But yeah, anytime you're looking to retire early, Roth money is good to have available to you.
So leave it to the government to make some benefits better for the wealthier people.
Right.
Exactly. Does this mean that then that your employer would automatically open up a Roth 401k for you if you are making these kind of contributions? Or do you have to say, hey, I'm going to make these contributions and they need to go into a Roth?
Yeah. So ultimately, if the employer is forcing you to make that Roth contribution, they will automatically open one for you. So yeah, if you're not already contributing to a Roth 401k yourself, they'll just open like a separate, like a sub account within your 401k. So it's nothing that you'll really have to go in and do since you're being forced to do it. But yeah, just think of it as like a separate bucket within your current 401k. It's not really a whole separate account.
Yeah. And is this only for the catch-up contributions? It's not for the employer contributions?
Correct. Good point. So, well, the ordinary employee contribution, that $23,000 limit, even if you're a highly compensated employee, you can still elect to do pre-tax for that, which is common to get that tax deduction today. But yeah, it's specifically for the catch-up that you'll be required to do Roth if you're highly compensated.
Right. So this, I guess we're kind of speaking to folks who are over the age of 50, who have the option to do the catch-up contributions, or over the age of 60, are in that band of 60 to 63. But for folks who are, let's say, for example, somebody who's 50, 51, 52, like several people in this room, if we're making those kinds of catch-up contributions and we decide that we're going to retire at 55, does that mean we still have to wait until 59 and a half to take money out of that retirement account to not have a penalty?
Not necessarily, and you bring up a good point. So if you leave your employer in the year that you turn 55 or later, 401ks have a special provision called the Rule of 55, and that allows you to pull money out of that account directly, penalty free. That only applies to 401ks. So if you end up rolling that money over to an IRA, which is common, you will have to wait until 59 and a half. But yeah, if your employer allows you to take partial withdrawals from that 401k after you separate, the Rule of 55 is a great thing to have access to.
Yeah, another way for those corporations to claw back some of that money because they're getting those fees on your 401k, as well as the investment firms who are managing those 401ks. They definitely want you to keep it in there rather than transfer it over into a traditional or a Roth IRA of your own.
So I don't know if I caught that. So you're saying that if I'm 55 and older and I decide to leave my employer or essentially retire, I'm able to take money out of my 401k as early as 55. I don't have to wait until 59.
Yep, that's correct. It is very specific that it has to be in the year that you turn 55 or later. So let's say, for example, you leave your employer at 54. That doesn't mean you can wait a year and then take money out. You wouldn't qualify. You have to separate in that exact year or later. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it does make sense. But is that new? Because I did not know that Rule of 55.
No, it's not new. I'm not sure exactly how long it's been around, but
Wow.
yeah, it's been around a while.
All right.
Gotcha.
I learn something new every day.
Yeah.
And if I am in that range between 50, let's say I do roll everything over and I am in that range between 50 and 59 and a half, can I just take out the contributions and not have those taxed like you can with a Roth IRA today?
If it's pre-tax money, no. Anything that you withdraw at any age is going to be subject to taxes. So whether you roll it to an IRA or just take it out of the 401k, that pre-tax money will be subject to taxes either way. But yeah, the Rule of 55 would just make you not subject to the penalty if you left it in the plan.
Gotcha. Okay. So that means that in that time frame, if you are thinking about early retirement, and we know a number of you are, that is something to consider. Do I want to leave some of the money in my 401k so that I can tap that money in those years of retirement, and then
Before 59 and a half.
yeah, right, not have to pay any penalty on that. Obviously, if it's a traditional 401k, you will pay taxes on that when that money comes out. It'll be added to your earned income.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One, N.A., member FDIC.
So I have a question. When someone is a high income earner and they are getting their putting money into their 401k, is the employer required or not required to put that into a Roth? For some reason, I'm thinking that they're required to put it into a Roth, but is that not the case?
No, and good point. So what we were just referring to was the catch-up contributions from the employee, I'm sorry. But for another provision that is starting next year is you can elect to have your company match. So the money that your company puts into your plan for you, you can elect that to be Roth as well. Whereas as it stands today, you can do it's been always pre-tax, so that money has always been taxable when you withdraw it. But now you have the option to elect that to be Roth if you'd rather, pay the tax on that money today and withdraw it tax-free later. So yeah, that's a separate provision as well.
It's almost as if they're trying to make it easier for people to just leave. Like, there's been talk about this gray ceiling and like the boomers just won't leave. And so Gen Xers and millennials can't like move up in the hierarchy. It's almost like they're trying to incentivize boomers. Get out, go,
Right.
take your money.
See, yeah. So this is an interesting new thing for me, because we've always kind of given this kind of general advice that if you're wanting to reduce your taxes now, get into a traditional 401k, 403b. If you're wanting to save taxes in the future, put your money into a Roth 401k. Now you're saying that you can kind of elect to do both at the same time, where you are putting your money into your traditional and you're asking your employer to put it into a Roth. But it sounds like there's a tax implication here.
Correct. Yeah. So it's Roth money is always going to be after tax, and your employer is not going to be gracious enough to pay those taxes for you. They
Really?
are.
I wonder why.
Yeah, right. You'll basically get a 1099-R form the following year. So if you elect your company match to be Roth, and let's say it's $1,000, it'll basically look like you made an additional $1,000 that year. But taxes are not going to be withheld on that. So you'll essentially claim that as income when you file and pay the taxes, federal or state taxes then.
And was that always the case for individuals who were electing to open a 401k as a Roth? That if I started out with a Roth and the money, let's say I contribute $10,000 and my employer contributes the $1,000, then does that mean that I would be getting a bill, in a sense, a tax bill for that $1,000 that my employer is putting in my 401k?
No, because it was always before, the employer match would always be pre-tax, so it wasn't taxable to you. The employer got to write it off as an expense basically, but it's considered income when you withdraw that company match. So yeah, now if you elect Roth, then you do have to pay income tax on it today, but not later.
Gotcha. That's interesting. This is folks. This is why John and I wanted to have Jake on the show. Is all of these changes are things that have happened since we were basically daily talking to folks about these kinds of things. So we're glad that you're here to help us stay current.
Yeah, happy to help.
And then there's a new change that I think is going to affect a lot of mostly younger folks who are just starting out. This is regarding automatic enrollments into 401ks. What's going on there?
Yeah, I think this is a great feature, a great update. So starting next year in 2025, if your employer's 401k plan was established in 2023 or later, they're now required to automatically enroll employees into the plan. whereas before that automatic enrollment was optional. Your employer could, elect that as a feature or not. But yeah, starting next year, you will automatically be enrolled at a minimum of 3% of your salary that will go into the 401k. It could be up to 10%. It's at the discretion of your employer. In addition to that, your contributions will automatically increase by 1% each year thereafter, up to a maximum of 10 to 15%, also at the discretion of your employer. So yeah, again, I think it's great for young folks who basically will automatically start saving for retirement, kind of that set it and forget it type of deal. And ultimately will, result in more retirement savings in the long run, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. I guess it would also affect those who job hop, right? If you're moving from one company to another, don't be surprised that your employer has automatically enrolled you in the 401k. There's still a requirement, though, for us as employees to go in and invest that, right? So we still have to make sure that even though they've elected to automatically withdraw that money from our paychecks and put it into a 401k, we have to make sure that it's invested based on what we think our
Risk tolerance, time horizon.
what our goals are for retirement. Is that right?
Yeah, so all 401ks have some sort of default investment choice. In most cases, it's what's called a target date fund, which simply takes your date of birth and says if you are planning to retire in your mid 60s, this fund is going to automatically be aggressive in your younger years and get more conservative as you get closer to that retirement date. So yeah, 401ks will have a default investment usually in one of those types of funds, but ultimately, if you think something else is better for your situation, then yes, you will have to go in and change that. Your employer's not going to automatically, figure that out for you.
Gotcha. And do you think that this is triggering more companies to actually start an employer-sponsored plan, or especially maybe smaller employers start an employer-sponsored plan?
I think so. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more scrutiny around employers or small businesses that don't offer them. It's never been easier or cheaper for businesses to offer 401ks just with the way technology is. And there's even tax credits available for small businesses to cover up to 100% of the cost for the first few years of administering a plan. So yeah, ultimately, I do think we'll see more and more small businesses starting to open these plans and offer them.
That's great. I personally think that that's a potential benefit for folks in the LGBT community, since so many of us, especially those who are maybe leaving a non-affirming household, they're moving away from home and that don't necessarily have a college degree. Oftentimes they're falling into service sector jobs that typically usually don't offer a 401k. You're not seeing these being offered in restaurants and bars and small businesses. So I really hope that does help more young folks and individuals who are in those sectors being able to get access to a 401k and participate in them.
Well, now that Donald Trump is a line chef at McDonald's, he might figure out a way to 401ks to small businesses.
For folks who are not paying attention to political news, yesterday, Donald Trump went to McDonald's to pretend that he was making French fries and giving them out to people, which
I've heard they were the best French fries ever.
yeah, we're not
best French fries anybody's ever had.
That's hilarious.
We're not going to get political.
Yes, we are agnostic on this show. Let's talk about inheritance. Thinking about rich people.
Yeah, I think the last one here, I think, is going to be affecting more and more of us LGBT folks, especially, is the fact that there is an inherited IRA change. What is the change to inherited IRAs?
Yeah, so there's a couple. The one they're both starting next year in 2025, but the what's called the 10-year rule is now fully in effect, which states that if you inherited an IRA, an individual retirement account, from someone who passed away in the year 2020 or later, you now have 10 years from the year that they passed to fully deplete that account. And you also have to take required minimum distributions from that now. So over the past few years since the Secure Act passed, the IRS has kind of left it a little ambiguous as to whether or not you had to take distributions over that 10-year time frame. And now they've said starting next year, you do have to as well. So those are the two kind of changes regarding those types of accounts next year.
Yeah, I remember one of the jobs that I had in financial services was having these kinds of conversations and working with individuals who a family member had passed away, and whether that was a spouse or parent or someone that it had inherited money from, and trying to explain all of the rules to them during that time period. Now I'm talking 20 years ago. There was the 10-year rule. There was the rule based on your age. Were you 10 years younger than your spouse? And all of
Yeah.
these different requirements. Were they already taking required minimum distributions? And it was very complicated to explain these to individuals. We'd send documents to them that explained everything, and then they would call us back and say, "Can you explain this to me again? Because it doesn't make sense in the documents that we'd send out." So it does sound like it's a lot more simplified. It's a little bit easier for individuals to understand. So this is if you are inheriting an IRA and it's not your spouse, right? I think there's a couple of other individuals who don't necessarily have to follow this. Do you mind sharing who those might be?
Correct. Yeah, so there's a term that's called eligible designated beneficiary, which is either a spouse, a minor child, someone who is not younger than 10 years of the decedent, or someone who's chronically ill or disabled. If you are one of those and you're considered an eligible designated beneficiary, you don't have to deplete the account within 10 years. You can still do what's called the stretch provision, which just means you're kind of stretching it over your lifetime now and just taking out those minimum distributions. But yeah, if you don't fall into one of those categories, then you do have to follow the 10-year rule essentially.
Gotcha. And with this new 10-year rule, folks, the individuals I'm kind of thinking about here are, say, for example, a same-sex couple who's been together for decades but never decided to get married, right? They cannot legally call each other a spouse, so you're not going to inherit it as it would be put into an IRA in your name. Or maybe you had a best friend and you've done everything together and you are just gay BFFs, right? And they decide to give you or mark you as the beneficiary of their retirement accounts. You may end up getting these. So we now have this new rule that you have to deplete that within 10 years. Is there any sort of like requirement that I have to take the same amount over 10 years, or is it percentage wise? Do I have to, is there some sort of required minimum distribution within that 10-year time frame?
Yeah, so the RMD, the required minimum distribution, is basically the minimum that you have to take out each year over that 10 years. You can certainly take out more than that. There's just going to be tax implications. So that's where it will depend highly on, your unique situation. But yeah, the RMD is going to be the minimum, and it's based off of the life expectancy of the decedent or your own, whichever one is longer. So for most people, you're probably inheriting an IRA from someone who is older than you. So it would be based off of your life expectancy to calculate that.
Gotcha. So if I am in this kind of situation, who can help me figure that out? How do I get the number that makes the most sense for me?
Me, I can do that. No, a financial advisor, a CPA. CPAs are going to be more commonly versed in tax law. So CPA, tax accountant. If you're a DIYer and you just want to look for a tool online, Charles Schwab usually has a really good RMD calculator. Obviously, always go to the source of the IRS website as well. But I will say about the Schwab calculator, they have a disclaimer on there right now that says they haven't updated it for the new rules. So that'll probably be coming by the end of the year. But yeah, there's a few different resources available to help you figure that out.
Awesome. Well, Jake, thanks for helping. I don't know if I got the waters completely clear, but help them to be a little less muddy when it comes to these new provisions. Now, I know that you mentioned that these were ones that you pulled out. There are other provisions regarding retirement accounts. This all comes from, was it the CARES? No, wasn't the CARES Act.
Secure Act?
Secure Act. Is that right?
Yeah, the Secure Act 2.0, which Biden signed into law in 2022. The original one was 2020. Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's weird. I thought I was told he's done nothing.
Yeah. Wow, somebody's on a little bit of a political hair up their butt today. So if folks want to stay current on this kind of information, how can they connect with or watch the information or hear the information that you're sharing on these?
Yeah, I'm active on quite a few social media platforms, as well as our website, which is sparkwealthadvisors.com. I post blogs multiple times a week, as well as YouTube videos. Our YouTube channel is at Spark Wealth Advisors. And like you said earlier, LinkedIn as well. I try to post pretty frequently on there. So again, Jake Skelhorn, if you want to find me on LinkedIn, I'd be happy to connect.
Yeah, definitely. We will link to that in the show notes, folks. So this is a question we've been asking a lot of folks, I guess, in part because of the political and kind of general climate in the United States right now. What is one thing that is has you excited or you thinking positively about right now?
As far as personal life, I would say our business, we're very focused on helping as many LGBTQ folks as possible. We're having more and more reach out. So it's definitely great to see people, seeking help mostly for the first time. Other than that, just the holidays coming up and getting ready to spend some time with family and do that whole shebang. But yeah, and excited to see what the next year holds as far as politics go as well.
Yeah, exactly. We're still waiting in anticipation right now, but folks, when this episode comes out, we'll all be either
We'll know the
celebrating.
doom or gloom of our lives.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Jake, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me.
The mission of Queer Money is to financially empower the LGBTQ plus community. Join us in thanking Capital One for supporting that mission.
Thanks, Jake, for a great interview and some top-notch info here. And to all our fabulous listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Queer Money Podcast. Don't forget your Queer Money takeaway and all the goodies we mentioned in today's episode in this week's newsletter.
And then mark your calendars, because on Thursday, we're handing out your next assignment in the How Gays Retire Fabulously bonus series, where we'll dive deeper into how Social Security could either make your golden years sparkle or seriously suck.
Wah, wah.
And don't miss next Tuesday's episode, where we'll reveal why the classic advice to, quote, pay yourself first, end quote, might just be the worst advice you've ever heard.
Until next time, stay fabulous.
Bye.